says I can't join.
Why? You should be able to join.
The meeting ID
You're part of this crew. How could it not be valid, for crying out loud? We're going to record this to the computer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So hopefully I'll get on in a minute.
Well, if not, we'll be going solo. They'll hear your voice. They won't see your face, but we got to get you on here because this ugly mug, I'm telling you. Hello, listeners, viewers, and everybody in between. I don't know if there's feelers out there. Maybe there are, right? Viewers,
Sure.
listeners, feelers.
Feelers.
Welcome to One-on-One Live with Coach Blu.
And Marissa.
And Marissa, we might have to rename this whole thing. That does sound, that every time I say that, it sounds super narcissistic. One-on-One Live with Coach Blu Robinson, licensed mental health therapist, substance use disorder counselor, formerly known as an LSAC, licensed substance use disorder counselor.
Yes.
Is it an A or a B? Who cares, right? Doesn't matter. Been doing this since 2000.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Welcome to the show, Marissa. There you are.
Oh,
Gary Thurston, thank you so much for giving me the Cubs pennant back there. A gift from Gary Thurston, Marissa's dad, who got it from her uncle Kevin, who passed away unfortunately several months ago. Yeah, it was a sad thing, but we get to put a little piece of Kevin and thank you, Opa, for saving that thing. It's a beautiful thing.
It's gorgeous.
He hung it up there and didn't even tell me it was there. And I came down. I'm like, what the heck? Where'd this come from?
Yeah, he was quite excited just giving you that early Christmas present.
Absolutely. So
Knew that you would respect and like that.
yep, it will be there for forever. I love it.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity for you to jump on here, ask your questions as they may pertain to addiction recovery, mental health, overcoming trauma, and everything in between. We do this
Sounds
as
like we do it all. And
we kind of do,
but we
you
try.
think about it. We developed this show for you, the listeners, to talk about stuff that might be plaguing you. If you want to jump on, you can ask your question through the several links that Marissa is navigating through. I mean, you're a multitasker at its finest, right?
Yeah. So when you hear the recording of this, and I may not be very loud, he yells at me for never being close enough to the mic. It's because I'm answering phones and I'm jumping from here to there. And so I guess I don't multitask that well.
And I think we can even flirt with some opportunities. If you would like to be a speaker on here, we could text you the number to reach us at, directly messaging you, and we can have you call in. We have the ability to do that now.
We're on Zoom.
Mhm.
They can just log in right now and come on live with the video.
They can now, or if they want to just do it by their phone, they want to talk to us. This little machine we got here does it all.
You're hooked in to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
Yep. So if you want to talk to us live, we can connect you via cell phone. So however, we do have questions here that have been submitted, some from past episodes, some just recent that we'll try and dive into. And I want you to know that we do our best to answer these, even if they're not on the air, because we want to make sure that you guys get everything that you need, get your questions answered. So don't worry if we don't read them on the air, we will respond to you. By way of announcement, I want to thank everybody who's participated in Project ELF. It's coming to a close this year. We're having our wrapping day where we'll be giving the gifts to all the families who come out and help us wrap on Friday.
This is such a fun day.
Yeah.
I don't know what other groups do this. They usually just give all the presents, but we meet with the parents. We try to have food, music, and then help them wrap all the gifts so they can see what their kids are getting, but also be able to help them do all the wrapping beforehand.
Absolutely. And it's very humbling. I myself have been a recipient of the Project ELF. They called it Sub for Santa back in the olden days when I was a young lad. And I've talked about this many times. And, I was probably age 7, 8, maybe 5, 6 or 7, I think, when this happened to my family. We were in heavy poverty. And I remember when I realized that we were, as I put it in my mind, a charity case, it really embarrassed me because I didn't realize that people knew that we were poor. And it only came to light years later when I was in a position with Marissa that we could start giving back to. I had to take a lot of those feelings back because I didn't understand it. Yeah. I wish that there would have been more, I don't know, acclamation as I was a kid, rather than just
explaining what it was and why. And
absolutely,
there are people out there that want to help. And
Absolutely. So I take this very seriously. It's a beautiful thing, and we've had people reach out to help with families this year that have just brought tears to your eyes. So thank you all who've been participating, who donated funds throughout the year. It's kind of funny. I'm not sure how this happened, but pretty much right now, Addict Athlete operates to raise funds for this season. It's kind of funny,
Often.
you know. So thank you, everyone. We'll be broadcasting live. You can watch some of the live videos of the experiences on Friday. So stay tuned, right?
Yeah, it's an exciting time, and we can't thank our donors enough. We have some people helping, with families and getting shopping done. I mean, there's no way I could do it all, and we could do it all if we didn't have the help from you guys, from donations to shopping to everything. And we thank you.
So one thing I want to share, Marissa, is that the reason I knew this would work for the team is because when I was working at the Utah County Division of Substance Abuse, it's got a new name now. I don't know what it's called, but back in the old day, I remember I was the therapist for a really large group, and we were approaching the holidays, and this is probably just before Addict Athlete took off.
Yeah.
Right. And we were talking in group, and there was some feelings of, discontent and just kind of like, remorse. And I'm like, you could feel it in the room. And I remember asking the group, what's going on? And several people in there were worried about Christmas. And I said, look, guys, we have the resources we have right now with the 20 to 30 plus people we have in this group, which was probably way more than we should have had back then.
Yeah.
But I said, look, if no one's going to do it, why don't we do it? And I said, who in here would be willing to shop for these two people for their families? Every hand shot up. And I remember like they all made a list and they passed around. And within 3 or 4 days, they had everything they needed. And I remember watching
just helping each other,
these people who society would say are throwaways, come together and support these two people, two separate families. And the joy that they expressed by doing so blew me away. So when we bumped into Terry, and Terry had this with the foster kids, and then we moved over to Addict to Athlete, where we were working with folks in recovery. Because let's face it, when you have fines and you have treatment bills and you have minimum wage jobs and you have all these things you have to do,
paying off old debt,
being garnished. How many times have we heard that people are doing okay, they're making it, and then bam, they get hit with a garnish?
Yeah. One of our athletes recently, I think $25,000. I can't even understand.
I'm all about paying debts, but we've got to do something better, people out there who's making these decisions. You got to quit being stupid, policymakers, because that right there is the potential risk for someone else to go relapse, because why try?
Yeah. Like, how do you even think of getting out of something like that?
Absolutely. So there's so many aspects of this, which is why it's important to still advocate for some of these things too. Nonetheless, that's why this exists. So thank you all. It does show the measure of how much people that society would typically look at throwing away can do when the right principles are applied, because there are no small people, especially on this team.
Yeah.
Should we jump into it?
Let's go.
Okay, let's do this. So this one is a carry on probably from Thanksgiving, Marissa, but I think it holds true because of Christmas and even New Year's for that matter. And this is, hey, curious about holiday sobriety. How do you stay sober when there's so much going on? New in recovery, biting at the bit here. What advice do you get to stay clean and avoid the pitfalls? You posted something about this specifically for Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving is one of these things, and how to stay sober during Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But holidays like this, Thanksgiving is an interesting holiday because it's when families typically get together.
Yeah.
And some family systems, they don't operate very well.
No.
And
it's an emotional, whether it brings up old, holidays, old fights, you think it's the time, most people, and that's how it's like portrayed on TV and in media, that, it's always a Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
Everyone gets together and everything's perfect, but that's, I don't know how often that really.
I don't think it should, but here's the deal. See, so there's the difference between my family and your family, in that there was never holidays we did with my family because they're all rogue, right? I mean, so it was always like, I'm going to your family. So there was never an option to not go with your family.
Yes.
And thank heavens, because I've seen, not in your family, but I've seen in people I've worked with and things of that nature where it becomes very difficult and challenging
Yeah.
trying to spread time. And my thing is when we start looking at whose house do we spend more time at, if we're getting to a point where it's creating frustration and arguments and even emotional distancing, then maybe it's time to put a nail in both of them and create your own.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, people sadly, get heartbroken that they're choosing, but it's like your family's getting bigger. You have to learn to share. And, that means that traditions that you may have always had may need to adjust or shift or change. And that's okay.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed, and to be very transparent, is that there's issues in all families, and there's heartbreak, and then there's frustration, and then there's sadness, and then there's guilt and remorse. There's all these things. But I think in order to make family functions through the holidays work, we've got to put all the bull crap on the shelf.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that none of us on this little ball of mud are perfect. None of us.
Yeah.
And why kind of harbor any kind of ill feelings or ill will towards someone during this time when really you should be coming together? And it's going to be inconvenient for someone somewhere. I was talking with a couple yesterday about this very thing, where the relationship they were in was causing such distress with the family that the family's kind of like emotionally blocked this individual.
Mm.
And the sad thing about that is this individual then chooses the person that they're with, and that person doesn't recognize the amount of sacrifice that was made to say, all right, I'm walking away from this because I choose you.
Yeah. I'm letting go of a lot of my immediate family
Mhm.
because I'm choosing you. Yeah.
So my mind drifts to two places. My mind drifts to the person, the family themselves, thinking, pull your heads out.
Mhm.
These relationships are real. And as we've known now, having lost teammates, friends, people close to us, not just to overdose, but also to COVID and things of that nature. Like we know
Yeah.
people in our inner circle
Yes.
that passed away. I'm thinking life's too fragile to be farting around with the stupidity of like grudges and those kind of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I get that we have these things in our hearts that make it very valid, and we have very strong opinions and things.
Mhm.
Heavens knows I do. But what I'm noticing is that with the people that we're losing and the situations that are happening, we got to remember that none of us make it out of this life alive.
Yeah.
Why waste time with some of the frustrations, right?
I think sometimes it's changing your perspective and kind of looking at it differently. And like you said, is this really that big of a deal? In the bigger picture of things, what's most important? Is it this relationship? Is it to be right? Is it to keep this tradition alive that we've had for 30 years? I remember growing up, we would always do Christmas Eve at my mom's mom. And it was always a big, huge dinner, and Santa would come. Well, as we got older, as kids got older, some of my cousins started getting married, lots of things and schedules changed. And that was just something we always did. And I can't remember what year it was, but my grandma just said, well, let's just meet I think we met at, it was like a Denny's, and had just breakfast all together. And
The Grand Slam, huh?
yes,
Moon over Miami.
I keep remembering it was like Robert E. Lee. What is that?
I
Is
don't
that
know what that is.
Denny's? Some breakfast. Anyway,
Sounds
that has,
meaty.
yeah, that has now transitioned into our family's new Christmas tradition, right?
Yeah, actually it has.
Every year, and it doesn't matter. It used to always be Christmas Eve in the evening, and then that year it changed. And now it's whenever we have the Thurston family Christmas party, we always have breakfast food. Yeah. Breakfast for dinner. It doesn't matter. Sometimes we've had it in the morning, sometimes the afternoon, it's been brunch or dinner. That's become one of our favorite traditions. And that tradition came from something that was changing our number one tradition that no one wanted to change.
Oh,
and it came from us being flexible to go, okay, we still want to be together as a family. So how can we do this and make it work? It's going to be different. But now, I mean, you've been in our family for,
I've hung out with you guys for a little over 20 years now. Yeah.
That's what we do every Christmas, right?
Absolutely.
And this started when I was a teenager, but we had done, the other dinner traditional only on Christmas Eve. And now, like this year, we're doing it on this Sunday. Mm-hmm. But it can change because everyone changes. So look at different ways that you can be flexible, whether that's changing your traditions or just being open to different ideas, perspectives, like just what's more important.
I like that idea. I like that a lot. So in realms of like the way that we do things, I know that there are a lot out there that celebrate holidays, birthdays, gatherings with alcohol.
Mhm.
And staying sober during the holidays is and can be quite difficult, especially when you start realizing that you may be the only one in your family system that is sober.
Yeah.
And it is kind of heartbreaking because, to a degree, I understand that, what, if you're able and you feel like you can have it and you can handle it, more power to you. No worries there. No sweat off my brow. It's fine.
Yeah.
But what I do notice is that no matter what you bring into your body, it's a distraction from something that is. You know what I mean by that? It's like, it's not, and people debate this with me all the time, but even on a biological level, if you're toxifying yourself to try and enhance, ignore, remove something from the experience,
Yeah.
it's a lie.
You're manipulating.
You're manipulating
the experience.
the reality of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's hard because, like, I know that there are some family systems that have such deep rooted, traditions, but also just because they forgot how to communicate and be with each other.
Yeah.
Unless there's something there to get everybody on the same level, they've forgotten how to emotionally communicate with one another.
Yeah.
So this is where we see inhibitions being dropped. This is where we see, like situations. I remember David Clark's talking about this specifically. Go back and listen to Coach Clark's, podcast here on Addict to Athlete, because his awakening came during a drunken stupor on Christmas, where he was completely inebriated, wrapped his kids' presents with electrical tape and just balled them up.
Know what he was doing.
And when he woke up the next morning and realized the significant sacrifice that he had made to get wasted versus to have the experience, it was soon after that he put himself on a new path.
Yeah.
And I look at those kind of situations and I think we may not understand the emotional damage that we create in our wake because we ignore it.
Yeah.
And
We're
so
just not even aware.
Yeah. And this goes into this question too, that's similar, Marissa. Like, I understand, the concepts, but also I feel guilty that I can't give my family as much as I want to.
Yeah.
This is something I bump into. You know this about me.
Yeah.
Growing up in poverty and the way that we didn't have much. And that Christmas that I was talking about where we were given charity was probably the best Christmas I ever had, because, and I'm not saying because of the amounts of stuff, but it was different stuff. It was stuff that was like, it was real. It wasn't, it seemed, this might sound funny, but it seemed quality.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But after that, it was kind of like throwaway stuff. And I'm not saying that, I was a kid. I'm saying like I told you this before too, and I'll be very real with you. Growing up in my lifestyle and the things that we did, I didn't know that you had to like communicate with people with purchasing power for things that you wanted. Mm-hmm. So I remember praying fervently for the Millennium Falcon as a kid, right? Christmas Day, nothing. And I remember thinking, what kind of cheap, right?
Christmas doesn't work out for me.
It's that little dude on the Polar Express. Like that's me. Yeah. And so I remember thinking, well, this is crap. And it did. It started to sour the experience. When I figured it out, though, it still didn't placate to the benefit. And so I found that in my life now, I try to go too much.
Yeah.
You've seen this with me.
Yeah.
I try to sneak things into the Amazon cart now, and you can see it. You're like, I don't think so. I'm like, come on.
A little overboard sometimes.
Absolutely. And knowing that stuff isn't going to bring happiness.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And I try to remind you in March or April, when all these toys are not being played with, like, hey, they don't really want that. They don't need it, obviously. So it's not just about opening.
So then what would you say about people in situations like mine? And you have helped me immensely with that. Mm-hmm. But I get emotional. It's that disappointment that I want to avoid. Yeah. So when you get a question here saying, oh, I want to do more, but I can't, I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
Because we can, but we can't. Does that make sense?
But it's, again, like you said, it's not just what you're getting. It's the environment that you're creating. What kind of holiday feelings, emotions, happiness, traditions are you creating in your home? Is it the smells? Is it, there's so much more to Christmas than opening a present.
Hmm.
It's the family get-togethers, it's doing puzzles on Christmas Day or going to a movie. And it's some of those traditional things that I remember from my childhood more than the gifts I opened.
Yeah.
And so, is it making, our kids just last week did gingerbread houses and making the gingerbread houses. And it's lots of different things and doing, we have our Project Elf wrapping day and our girls are so excited. I think they both, are planning on coming and trying to get work off to come because that's become something really special to them.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here hearing you, and listeners, I'm sorry if you're seeing this because Coach Blu's kind of a blubber sometimes, man. But it kind of hit me when you were saying that, why this is kind of difficult for me too. And this is something you and I need to have a long conversation with.
Yeah.
And that is, our kids are getting older.
Mm-hmm.
We have an 18-year-old here now. She's very rarely here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we had to go rescue her in the middle of the night yet last night because of the snowstorm.
Yeah.
And it was horrible, but she
Yeah.
drove her little pizza cutter tire car over there to Orem. And
too late, wasn't looking at the weather.
yeah, being a teenager and we get upset, we drive over there. On the way back, I remember we weren't mad. We were having great conversations, but they're getting older. I'm not prepared for this.
Yeah. For them to leave. It'll be difficult.
Does that make sense? Like, I'm not prepared for this.
And I know you've said that too, is like, we need to have these experiences because it's not going to be forever. And that's hard to realize. Yeah.
Do you think we've done a good enough job? That, like, let's say, because Brooklyn's 18, when I turned 18, I mean, when I turned, 16, 15, 14,
Yeah.
no one really cared where I was. Does that make sense? My parents were always like in Windover every weekend. Like, I very rarely saw them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Which opened up tons of doors for me to act a fool, to start using at an early age. Horrible. But I don't know if, and we're not overprotective parents by any means.
No.
We know that, they're growing up, but I'm like, I'm going to miss this. This is not going to be easy. Because you remember one of my biggest traumas I've talked about with trauma threshold is losing my kids, losing you.
Yeah.
But I thought that was to death, but it's not. It's growing up, moving on.
Yeah. It's those transitions of life is just changing, And
We kind of hijacked this question, but I think it's important because this stuff means a lot, man. Like, I've loved being a dad. And I know it's not going to change. I'm always going to be their father. I know this.
Yeah.
And we still have some young ones we get to try and wreck before they turn 18. But as we're sitting here talking, I'm thinking, this is going to be hard. And if we don't talk about these kind of things, because our traditions are going to change, obviously.
They have to.
Uh-huh. I mean, we could get sucker punched. I could get sucker punched.
Luckily, though, right now, Brooklyn doesn't want to leave. She
Yeah.
wants to stay here forever.
She says that, but I see it. I see the writing on the wall.
But I see something, just who knows, something's going to come out of nowhere and she'll be out.
So I think we have to go back to the mechanism of who moved my cheese, the ultimate book on change, right? We've got to be okay that change is happening. And change may come in you spending less time with your family because of some of the choices they make, but it's about you changing into a position where you can create your own. That's not easy to do either.
Yeah.
And no one should be alone. But like, I'll be honest with you, and I've made this decision a long time ago. If it means jeopardizing my family, my life, my sobriety, I'm not investing in people that don't have my best interests in mind.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So you take what I feel, and I feel like I'm a very healthy individual, but you put it into the position of someone who maybe in your family, in your eyes, has made bad choices or bad decisions. They're still your family. And so if they're choosing not to come, maybe evaluate how they're being received. And we've got to stop with the pettiness. We've really got to stop with it. And you may have valid reasons to be upset with these individuals.
Yeah.
And boundaries are okay to have, but evaluate them. Is it them or is it you?
Well, and that may be a point to ask that question to maybe somebody else that's a third party. Sometimes we're so close to it.
Yeah.
We just see it as an issue, and getting somebody else's point of view is a good idea.
Well, without getting too open, because this isn't the whole family show here. We were talking to a very dear friend of ours, a mentor of yours. He's a dermatologist.
Oh, yeah.
And when we were talking about some of the changes in the family, do you remember what he said? You got to just love them.
Oh, yeah.
You got to just love them. And coming from that third party person, I'm like, you spot on.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what differences we have. Doesn't matter if we think they're right or they're wrong. People, we have to just love these people.
Yeah.
Our family. Now you can protect yourself, obviously, but you can demonstrate love, I think, without having to succumb to some of the holiday shenanigans, right?
Well, it's hard not to think, oh, but you would be much better if you made these choices, but it's not our life.
Absolutely.
It's hard. I have a question that kind of goes along with this that was just posted. What do you suggest if you find you're in a situation where you are the one that is always adapting? I'm really struggling with this right now, trying to give, but yet set boundaries.
Yeah, this is how much capacity do you have? And are you the one that always has to bend? What happens when you bend something too much over and over and over again?
It gets weaker.
And what happens?
It breaks. It's important to, we said to be flexible.
Yeah.
Not so rigid that you break on the first bend.
What is the difference between flexibility and bending?
Well, I think flexibility is stretching.
Yeah.
And it's going to be something that's slow and something that's done repeatedly.
That's not too aggressive, right?
Yeah, not too quick.
That doesn't go beyond its expansion point.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's things you can do to be flexible, but I don't think you should be the one that bends. And what I mean by that is, what kind of respect is being shown on the other side? Is it being reciprocated? This is one of those situations I would say that you get to dictate and judge the situation and how much you're willing to give. See, so like, for instance, for me, I know when I go to visit my mom or whatever, where I'm not even sure where she is these days, but like, I know what I'm getting when I go there. I'm not getting any, how are you doing? How are the kids? I'm not, I mean, she doesn't even know their names. So it's kind of like, I know I'm not getting that. So I know what I'm in store for. So my expectations are nil.
That's the key, is what are your expectations? Because sometimes our expectations are too high, or our expectations are things that the other person cannot and will not ever do. So if we're expecting it, we're just going to be let down.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's maybe because you haven't even communicated what your hopes and those expectations are. So how does the other person even know? And they're not going to read your mind.
Yeah.
So if you just have these expectations that they're never reaching, but you're not willing to even talk to them about it, that's not going to happen. And if you're just expecting it, you're just going to be let down and sad all the time, or frustrated.
It puts them in a position where the people receiving it, they expect it. Does that make sense? And so they may not even realize the fact that you're looking at it as bending. They may be looking at it through the lenses of, this is who you are. See, because it's like this. I don't know if anyone notices that I'm not around on that side. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that's evidenced by everything that happens in between these holidays. Do you follow me? Like, so I'm like, I put it out there years ago. Be careful with what you say, because I'll respect it. Mm-hmm. And that's a hard one too. But they know where I stand now. You know what I'm saying? Like, They know where I stand. And they try every once in a while to kind of, I don't want to say manipulate, but try to pry back in.
And maybe some of their expectation is that when you're ready, you'll start showing up, you'll start calling. And maybe your expectation is they'll call me when they're ready. And so then you both just ignore each other. But what is that okay with you?
Yeah. See,
And
I expect that though. I know what I'm going to get when I put that $100 of emotional currency in the machine and I pull the handle and out comes $0. I know that's what I'm getting.
yeah,
I know that I'm not putting $100 into the 200 return machine. You follow me?
yeah,
So I'm like, I'm perfectly okay with seeing the bells, the whistles, and being entertained, but I also have a limit on how much I'm investing.
yeah,
So what are your expectations? And it's like this. This is a hard one for some people, but whoever wrote this may understand what I'm saying when I say there are times when you have to seriously consider, if not following through with sacrificing the relationships that don't exist. Now, breaking that down, it means this. I know that the typical mother-son relationship does not exist in my relationship. I know this as
and
evidenced
knowing,
by
rec- recognizing that maybe the relationship you're wanting is a expectation, not a
not
real
exactly.
relationship.
Yeah. Drill down on that for a minute because you're spot on.
Yeah, I think a lot of us do that. We look at a relationship with a parent or a sibling and think, well, this is how it should be, or this is how it used to be. And so when things aren't there, you don't want to ruin it or make it worse because there's a chance it could get better or back to where it used to be.
Mhm.
But if the relationship isn't even there, is it really a relationship? You have to stop and ask yourself, what is the relationship currently or for the last couple years or 5 years, and maybe it doesn't really even exist. So why do you keep fighting for something that isn't really there?
So this is a great conversation to be had too, because I'm finding this with a lot of my individual clients I'm working with right now who have these unrealistic expectations, but these desires that are absolutely going unfulfilled. But they're still in that mindset that I know it's going to pay off this time. And they put the money in, they pull the handle, nothing comes out. I know it's going to be this time. They put the money in, pull the handle, out comes nothing. That's a hard thing to truly wrap your heart and your mind around. Because when I figured this out, I'm like, nothing's changing. In fact, I'm feeling worse than on this hope
Yeah.
that something will come back, and it doesn't.
Liz just shared a very, very wise thought. She said, I've learned that not all of those that I love have the capacity to love me back. I have changed the expectation of having a loving hug from a grandma to I'm okay just being in the same room as her. It has saved my holiday experience this year.
Liz, holy
Yeah.
cow, spot on.
And that's a great, not just, oh, they're a bad person because they don't love me or show me love the way I need it or want
Mhm.
it, but they don't have the capacity to do it correctly. Maybe they don't know how to return that kind of love or they're not comfortable with it. Yeah. If you're talking hugging specifically, I'm not a big hugger. And so I don't even think about it sometimes where other people may be offended because, where other people just hug everyone. That's just not something
I'm a
I've
hugger.
done a lot.
I'm a
It
hugger.
depends on the situation, and it's just, so it's like, I don't mean to offend somebody if I don't hug them. Doesn't mean I don't love them, but maybe that's just not my
See, and I do,
love
and I worry about
language
the same
or
thing as I hug people, and I'm like, they're probably thinking this is weird.
yeah.
It's the same thing with this amazing man that I was able to get to know and serve for many years in our last Orem neighborhood. We'll call it a ward for those that are familiar. And
Congregation.
his name was Keith Nilsson.
Yes.
And Keith was this very wise old man who would sit and greet everyone that came to the building on Sunday to worship.
Yeah. Whether he knew you once or never met you.
Yeah. And he hugged absolutely everyone. Our kids would push in front of us to get a hug from this man.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I hope I don't hurt anyone's feelings by saying this, but I remember one time him asking me, Bishop, is this okay? And I said, absolutely. Because you're no longer going for them. They're coming to you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And I'm like, that is absolutely amazing.
And he and his wife were the first people we
We met, the very first people we met.
We lived there for 17 years. And yeah, hugged us, I think the first time we met and every single time thereafter. And we always felt like we were family with him.
I,
Always.
I think that I was called to serve in that position um, through him and his recommendation. Does that make sense? Um, so those kind of things, I think we need to take a very strong look at. Liz, that was a spot on comment. I'm just blown away by the emotional awareness that comment brings, because you get me thinking, Liz, you get me thinking like, all right, then am I still holding on to stuff that's going to frustrate, and don't get me wrong, I have these boundaries for a reason, and they have not gone unwarranted, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
But I also know that now I'm mature emotionally enough to be able to know that when I put in $100, I'm getting nothing in return. And for me, that's okay. But I'm not going to give more than I have capacity or ability.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think we have to look at that situation too in this, am I the one that's always bending? Remain flexible, but do not bend. Because after a while that will get fatigued and it will break. That's a classic. Stretching muscles, like you said, stretching, being flexible. If you don't stretch it, it will tear.
Yeah. And that's something they have to do all the time. It can't just be really rigid and stretch, one day and then that'll break.
Absolutely. That's a very long path to get to that destination. But like, yeah, there's a lot that comes up during the holidays. There's tons. And it's interesting for me having the experiences I've had. Our traditions have had to change just because of situational issues with growing up. And I mean, we used to love going up to see the city lights up in Salt Lake City. And now that that's all under construction, it's not as big or as
Yeah.
as influential, but it's still there.
Yeah.
But we just haven't. And so go experience it, right? Starting new. It's funny. Traditions are funny because it's almost like we have to do this. I don't even know, do we have any specific traditions that we need to do every year? We would do the breakfast thing that you're saying, right?
Yeah. I'm sure there's some that I'm trying to think.
So I can remember the most powerful Christmas we've had as a Robinson family. And I remember like it was yesterday. If it was Groundhog's Day, that would be the day I would choose to repeat every day. And it was several years ago. We started the day off by opening presents, and it snowed, and it was snowing throughout.
Mm-hmm. The kids got sleds.
The kids got sleds for Christmas. We went sledding on Christmas Day. We came back from sledding, and we were invited to participate in a private theater screening of Nacho Libre,
Best movie to watch on Christmas.
By the Pakahi family, who had recently lost their son, Josh.
No, it was his last Christmas.
Was it his last Christmas? I thought he had passed away by then.
No, it was right before he passed.
So we
knew it would be his last Christmas.
We got to go watch Nacho Libre with the Pakahi family in a private screening of Nacho Libre on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
We got to laugh and feel that love. After that, we went home and ordered Chinese food. And we finished the day off by watching movies and playing with all the stuff that the kids got. And you look back at it, and it was all about time. It was all about investment in real relationship. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Everything about that day just bled relationship.
Yeah. Well, and it was like picture perfect to have snow on Christmas. We don't always get that here in Utah, and yeah, it was a wonderful Christmas.
So no matter what comes down the pipeline, make that your goal, is to either reestablish or to begin or to cultivate relationships, right?
And what does that mean to you? Is that spending the time at home? Is it, look at those things and try to decide.
Absolutely. It's one of the most beautiful things. Before we wrap this whole session up, is there anything else that's come through that people have questions, comments, concerns about?
I haven't seen them.
Did we scare everybody away because Coach
everyone's
crying?
We're hearing good comments here.
Okay. We will have one-on-one next week, even though it's getting close to Christmas. We'll be doing that. So
Wednesday at noon.
If you want, we can we'll publish maybe the links and the ability for you to call in if you'd like to. I would love to maybe put a plea out there to maybe talk about some of the traditions that you guys have. I would love to know about you, the listeners,
Cool.
next Wednesday at
Maybe
noon.
give some of us and some of you guys some new ideas that you haven't thought about that, like, of
Absolutely.
how you can maybe create a new tradition.
Absolutely. And I would love to see it, to feel it. For those of you in Utah, specifically Utah County, the Provo, Orem, Springville, Utah County area, if you are so inclined, on January 1st, we are meeting at a park in Provo. If there's snow, if not, we'll be going up to a location up American Fork Canyon called Tibble Fort
Yes.
to go sledding with our minor league. This will be the first minor league activity pretty much since the pandemic began.
Yeah.
But we're doing this to get back to some of the roots. And Don was one of the ones that created this.
Mhm.
He's the one that wanted to go sledding. And so as a remembering moment to Don and to his shenanigans, but also to give back to the minor league, we're starting 2022 off with an event at noon on January 1st.
And so
go
far,
sledding.
It looks like we might have a white Christmas and might have snow. So that
Absolutely.
makes it even
So stay
better.
tuned to our social media outlets, our website. If you want to know more about Team Addict to Athlete, addicttoathlete.org is the place to go. We offer a online recovery coach program where you can become a certified sober coach
Yeah.
to either open your own chapter of Addict to Athlete or use it as a platform to create your own business. So that's a 40-hour intense training. All the information is online, addicttoathlete.org. Under what tab? Is it resources?
Yes. Resources. And I think that one is under personal training.
Absolutely. If you are so inclined and you'd like to get some Addict to Athletes gear, like the old trail running shirt here,
I have a shirt.
you've got a shirt. You've got an extracurricular recovery shirt on.
Stay wild, stay free.
Stay
We have some
wild,
really
stay
fun
free. Yeah,
logos and shirts.
absolutely. You can jump on our website, go to the resource, our team store tab,
Mhm.
and you can see it there. Now, we have been told that because of COVID and probably the astronomical amounts of work this company is getting, that it may take some time.
As everything
does right now.
everything's behind time. So
Absolutely.
sorry.
So we're looking for ways to speed this up. Maybe doing some stuff here soon to get some gear in hand so we can get it to you quicker. But jump on addicttoathlete.org team store and find the running gear. 2022 can be your year to recommit to yourself, which is anywhere from exercise and becoming balanced, learning more about your mental health status, overcoming trauma and overcoming your addiction. I want to thank Radio Ronin, the Radio Ronin Network, for all they do. Now's the time to listen to Radio Ronin. They've got some awesome podcasts that keep the spirits up. They talk lots of Disney, lots of fun jokes and whatnot. Josh Hansen is a personality there, along with Panda and along with Chandler and Chunga. If you guys are from Utah, you know who Jimmy Chunga is. He's a DJ for many years. The Radio Ronin Network. But there's other podcasts on there that you guys should check out. Greg's Guide to New Music, who is Panda. He releases one every Friday that goes over the new music that's released. And you guys, it's good stuff. Greg's got a very eclectic approach to music, and he gives you the in and out of it. So go listen to Greg's Guide to New Music. You've also got the New Day podcast. You got tons of good podcasts on there. So go check it out. Have you heard some? You haven't heard some of these. I'm a podcast fool though. I listen to these things all day.
I do too, but I'm more of the crime.
Oh, yeah, standard issue.
Yeah. Something was wrong is my current.
Something is
podcast.
wrong.
Something was wrong.
Man, the empath that I am doesn't allow me to listen to too much of that stuff. I'm just like, oh, you know what that's like.
Yeah.
Listeners, we'll see you next Wednesday. So we'll wish you a happy holidays, Merry Christmas now, but we'll repeat that next week. And until next time, please go turn that mess